Welcome to the Cozy Little Library today with your Clean Reads Book Buddy. And wow, do I have a big surprise for y'all. Megan SOJA, author of the beloved Christian fiction revolutionary books, Harbor of Spies. We have been chatting for a while and she agreed to hang out with us today. Megan, welcome to BookTube. I am beyond thrilled to chat with you today. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it was like becoming an author for you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is so much fun. I'm really happy to be here. So, quick introduction. I am a wife and a mom of two girls. We live in Western New York, and it was always my dream to be an author, but it was also always my dream to be a mom. So I'm very thankful to be living both of those right now. When I'm not writing, I'm often doing mom-related things, taking my girls around to their different activities, and it's a joy to watch them pursue the things that they love, and it's a lot of fun. So we love as a family to be outdoors together, especially in the summertime. We enjoy a lot of swimming and visiting the lake, canoeing and kayaking and hiking, those kind of things. I grew up hiking in the Adirondack Mountains a lot, which is in northern New York, and grew up climbing the high peaks there. I finished climbing the 46 high peaks when I was an adult, so that was a fun accomplishment to reach, and that actually kind of plays into my my path to writing as well. So aside from writing, I actually really love science, and that was what I pursued in college. I earned a biology degree, and I worked in the biology field for a little while, and then I ended up going into teaching and working in that. But I always love to write. It's kind of one of those, I just have always had a story in my head. I actually thought that everybody had stories in their head all the time, and then realized that wasn't the case. But I didn't pursue writing probably until about 10 years ago. My older daughter was a toddler, and I decided that I wanted to really buckle down and see if I could actually write a full novel. And although I knew I wanted to write historical fiction eventually, I also knew that it would take a lot of research to do it well. And since I had this little toddler, I decided I would start somewhere else. So that's where the Adirondacks come in, because I started with writing a contemporary romance set in the Adirondack Mountains. And that was a really great experience for me. I learned so much. I think that one of the best ways to learn the craft of writing is to write. So it was a long journey to get that first book done, but I learned a ton. I also used that time to get plugged into some writing groups and just hone the craft that way, and also learn a little bit behind the scenes about the publishing world. And in doing that, one of the big pieces of advice I heard was you should not write the second book in a series until you have heard from a publisher, if you want to go the traditional publishing route, that they want the series. So you write one book and then they recommend you write something completely different. So I decided, hey, for my completely different, I'm going to jump into the historical fiction world. And so I started diving into that. I'll get a little more into the details of that later, but that was how the story that became Spark of the Revolution began. So that's the quick version of my journey to becoming an author.
That is so interesting to me to hear how you got started. So let's see, for those who are not familiar and just for fun, I would love to hear how you would describe your Harbor of Spies series.
Yeah, this is a challenging question. It's probably not supposed to be, but I think even though everybody says you got to have an elevator pitch ready for your books, I've always found this to be really difficult to do. Kind of the same with writing the back cover copy on books. A lot of authors I've talked to are like this. It's just kind of, there's something difficult about taking the whole story and parsing it down to the most important pieces that are going to hook and grab people's attention, but I will do my best. So Harbor of Spies is a historical romance series set in Boston at the start of the American Revolution. It weaves in authentic history so that you feel like you are living the events right alongside the characters, from the Boston Tea Party and the battles of Lexington and Concord to the Battle of Bunker Hill and the Siege of Boston. It's also threaded with espionage, a lot of tight family connections and friendships, sweet romances, and of course a strong faith in God that sees the characters through, and is hopefully something that you can take away to grow and encourage your own faith as well. So hopefully that's a good elevator pitch there.
No, that's perfect. How did you get the idea for the series?
Yeah, I have loved the Revolutionary War era since I was a little girl. I had the Felicity American Girl doll, and I remember there was an event at Colonial Williamsburg that was like a Felicity tea. And my parents took us to that, and that was just so cool. I loved it. I remember playing the stick and hoop game on the grass in front of the governor's palace, and it was just such a good experience. And I have just been interested in that time period since then. So I knew that I wanted to write a Revolutionary War era story or series, ideally, but I didn't know exactly where or when I wanted to set that, because there's obviously such a wealth of fascinating history there. So it actually happened because my younger daughter was born with a congenital heart defect. And so we had been going to Boston for some of her treatments and surgeries there, because they have a really fantastic children's hospital. And while we were there, actually it was 2021. It was her biggest surgery. She had kind of a staged surgery approach that we had to do, and it was the biggest one, and we knew we were going to be there for quite a long time. And we had one day free between her like pre-op appointment and her actual surgery to go out and do some touristy stuff, which we had not had a chance to do before. And so we took a walk. We started in Boston Common, and we walked down to the wharf, and we saw Faneuil Hall and passed some of the old cemeteries, and it was just really fascinating. And so I kind of started to get this idea, I think Boston is where I want to focus on for my stories. And so actually it ended up being in her cardiac ICU room as she was recovering from that surgery that I started doing the research. I had a little corner table in the back of the room, and I sat there with my laptop and filled those long hours of waiting for her to get fully healed, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of character ideas and building. And so that's actually where the very beginning of the series began. Spark of the Revolution was the book that was first, and that started right there in her hospital room in Boston. So I can thankfully say that she's doing fantastic now. She's doing so well. The surgeries were a success, and we're really thankful for the great care she had in Boston, and I'm thankful for the inspiration that came from being there. So God really took something that was a really difficult time in our lives and used it for something really beautiful. And now my daughter's thriving, so we're super grateful for that.
I love that. Praise the Lord, and thank you for sharing that with us. I would like to know, what came first, the scenes or the characters in Harbor of Spies?
Yeah, honestly, it's a little bit of both for me, but if I had to choose one, I'd say probably characters. A lot of authors will talk about being either a plotter or a pantser. So a plotter is someone who plans out their story in advance, and a pantser is somebody who writes by the seat of their pants. I think of myself as more of a plantser, a combination of both. I tend to really get to know my characters really well ahead of time before I start the story, and that helps me to build, even if I haven't planned all the things that are going to happen along the way. Because if you understand your character, who they are, what motivates them, where they need to grow, then it's easier to piece them into the story. So that's a big part for me. I do sometimes have scenes that just kind of pop into my head. I'll have a kind of a moment that's like, oh, that's what I need to include that scene somewhere. And so I'll jot those down, and that helps me give a little bit of structure and inspiration to the story. Also for me, honestly, a lot of it is the research that will help me with building the story, because I'll start to learn about the historical event that I want to have as the setting for my characters, and I'll start to get ideas of, oh, if this has to happen historically, really has to happen, then what can I do with my characters? How can they be involved, and how can they fit into those pieces? So that really helps me too with planning out the story and getting ideas. And sometimes I'll just have like a line pop in my head. It actually worked that way for the first line of Spark of the Revolution. I didn't even have a name for my main character heroine yet, and this line popped in my head that was, Patience Abbott was certain her parents had erred in naming her. I thought, okay, there's the opening line, and there's my character's name. So there's inspiration coming from a lot of different areas, but if I had to narrow it down to one, a lot of it does come down to the characters.
So interesting. I'm obviously a huge Revolutionary Era fan. I love the history, but your characters are one of the best things about your books because they feel so genuine, so real, and their faith is incredibly genuine to me. Since this is Christian fiction, can you share a little bit about your faith journey?
Yeah, definitely. A strong faith thread is so important to me in my stories because it's so important to me in my own life. And honestly, I don't know that I could write a book without faith in it, because to me, if you're going to bring the characters through these hardships that you bring them through, then you have to also offer them the hope of Christ, because that's the only real answer. So I'm very thankful that I grew up in a strong Christian family. My parents set a great example for me of faith from the time I was young. I came to know the Lord personally when I was a little girl and grew to know him better as I grew. Attended some great Bible classes in college where I felt like I got to understand his word a lot better, and just had a really solid foundation, which I'm very grateful for. Then when my husband and I were expecting our first baby, we went in for an appointment at 30 weeks, and the doctors found some things that they were concerned about. Everything had been fine up until that point, but at that appointment, they found out that our daughter had developed something called hydrops, which is where fluid builds up inside the baby's body. And often this is caused by something else, but they couldn't figure out what was causing it, and so there was nothing they could do to treat it. And unfortunately, when she was born a couple of weeks later, she passed away shortly after she was born. And that was the first time that I really struggled with my faith. It wasn't that I doubted God or even that I was angry with him. It was more that I felt like maybe I don't understand as well as I thought I did who he is or his purposes and plans. And so I really wrestled with that for a while. And one of the ways that I wrestled with it was actually through writing. I had a blog at the time that had just kind of been like a family blog. But I used that space to just work through my questions and my grief. And in doing so, I felt myself drawn back to God in a deeper way than I ever had been before. And I was also able to share that with other people, which was so encouraging, because even if they weren't walking through the exact same thing, obviously, as we were, they could say, hey, this, what you said, I've struggled with before, or this helped me in this area of my life. And that was really a blessing in the midst of a very difficult time. So our daughter was named Faith, and I can genuinely say that my faith grew because of what happened. And so that was like my first real kind of test of my trust in God. And then some years later, my youngest daughter was born, the one that has the congenital heart defect. And that was really another challenge. I want to say that I had this great strong faith that was, unshaken. I'd already been through so much before, but it was really hard. It was really hard all over again. And actually, when we first discovered her heart defect at 20 weeks, we went in for the typical 20-week scan, and they found that, and they actually also found hydrops, which was the same thing that we had lost our first baby to. And so that appointment, we were pretty much told that there was no chance that she would live. And that was just crushing to us. But we were praying, and we were hoping that God had a different plan for her. And thankfully, he worked in her little body as she was growing, and he took that hydrops away. And that really was a miraculous thing that allowed her to grow and survive. And yes, she did still have the heart defect, and yes, that was still a long road, but I could see God's hand in that, and I have seen his hand in her life so many times with the way he's led us to different doctors and surgeons and cared for her. So again, it was another time where I felt like, oh, there's still more to learn. There's still more to know about who God is, what he's doing in my life. And I've just come to realize that, we never stop. We should never stop learning more about who he is. We should never stop drawing nearer to him and trying to align our lives with his will and purpose for us. And so if you've read my Harbor of Spies book, you might have seen some things already that reflect my own faith journey, especially in the third book, Scars of the Revolution. Libby's questions about God's goodness in the midst of things that feel very not good are incredibly reflective of some of the questions I ask myself. And I'm so thankful that God used trials and griefs and sufferings to not only grow my faith personally, but to hopefully encourage other people as well, because we are called to do that, to encourage each other in our faith and walk alongside one another. So I know he's still growing me, and he will be until the day he calls me home, but I'm very grateful for the way he's used those hardships in my life to bring me closer to him, and also to be woven into my stories.
Your faith is woven into those stories. They are beautiful, and your testimony is absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. What is your favorite Revolutionary America event?
I love this question. It's a very good question, another hard one. There's just so much to love and so many interesting pieces that you could pull out of the events of the American Revolution. I am obviously a little biased to Boston, so I would have to say I love the Boston Tea Party. And I also love Henry Knox's Noble Train of Artillery, which is going to be in the fourth book of the series, Soul of the Revolution, that comes out in November. But to me, both of those events are really fascinating because it's the tenacity and the courage of everyday people. I love the Boston Tea Party because while we hear a lot about big names that we recognize, Samuel Adams and John Hancock and those kind of things, you have everyday people that were just living their normal lives that decided, I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to participate in this thing that could get me in really big trouble, but also could make a huge difference. And I love that we get to have a glimpse into those everyday people. Same thing, Henry Knox is just fascinating. He was a bookseller in Boston, self-trained through reading, which is so cool. And he managed to take artillery all the way from Fort Ticonderoga in New York down to Boston in the middle of the winter to help free the city from the siege and kick the British out of the city that they'd been occupying for so long. And again, like normal people, these teamsters, these men of the wilderness that would come and drive the oxen and the horses and ensure that these cannons didn't fall through the ice as they're crossing rivers and lakes. I just think it's really a beautiful way to remember the real spirit of the American people. And so I love those kinds of events.
The big question, who is your favorite character and why?
These questions keep getting trickier. No, I like this question, although it does feel almost impossible to pick a favorite because I love different things about all these characters. Patience and Josiah definitely hold a special spot in my heart, being in the first published book. Libby's faith journey, as I mentioned, is very reflective of my own. Isaac was really fun and challenging to write, coming from the British officer point of view. And then Catherine is a musician, which music is very important in my life, so that was fun to kind of weave that in. Elijah was a tricky character. I don't want to give any spoilers, but he gave me a run for my money sometimes writing, but all the more fun because of it. I think if I really had to pick, I would narrow it down to Hannah and Will. So I know that's still not one character, but they're in the same book. I just love that they both have a steadfast devotion and sacrificial love for their families. That's just very important to me in my own life, very reflective of my own life. And also their trust in God. I love the way that they come to trust God, not just for themselves and what's going to happen in their own lives, but to trust the lives of those people that they love to God as well. And I think that's something really important. It was something that encouraged me as I wrote it, and so hopefully it's encouraging to readers as they read it as well.
I can tell you that we are all blessed by this series. Book number 4 is coming out November the 10th, Soul of the Revolution. So excited. Megan, thank you so much for answering the questions my patron members and I came up with. This has been a dream. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been such a pleasure to talk with you and share some of my heart behind these stories and just connect with other people who love the American Revolution and love the Lord and love to read. So thanks for having me.